So please join me in giving a warm CPAC welcome to Senator Marco Rubio.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is the 7th straight year that I get to speak in CPAC, and it reminds me of the first year that I was here. The year was 2010. I, at the time, was an underdog candidate for the United States Senate. My opponent was the sitting governor of Florida. His name was Charlie Crist. I know that's what I said at the time, too. But no one would listen. It was a time when the conservative movement was being told that we needed to become more like the Democrats. It was in the aftermath of 2008. Barack Obama had won, and we were told that the only path forward was to become more like them, to moderate our message, to moderate our stances, to basically be less conservative. I never believed that at the time, and so I chose to run, and it was a difficult race. At the beginning of that race, the only people that thought I had a chance to win all lived in my home. And 4 of them were under the age of 10. The entire Republican leadership in Washington, D.C. was with him, and everything I knew about politics said there was no path forward. But it didn't matter to me at the time, because I believed deeply that if America continued on the road that the new president had put us on, we would lose the things that made it a special country and the place that changed the history of my family. You fast forward 7 years to this moment, things have only gotten worse. We've only gotten further and further away from the principles that made America the greatest nation in all of human history. And it brings us to this moment in our history now. The election of 2016 is no longer simply a choice between political parties or even ideologies. The fundamental question before America right now is, what kind of country is this going to be in the 21st century? The thing that I always enjoy about CPAC is the incredible number of young people that come to these. Younger Americans. And by younger, I mean anyone under 44. Although I feel 45 this week because I've had the flu, but anyway. Thank you. And what we ask ourselves in this campaign is, what is this country going to look like? What will it look like when my 16-year-old daughter graduates from college? What will it look like when my 13-year-old daughter starts her first business? Or my 10-year-old son starts his family? Or my 8-year-old son buys his first home? I can tell you what it's going to look like if we stay on the road we're on right now. They will be the first Americans, you will be the first Americans, that inherit from a previous generation a country worse off than the one that was left for your parents. That is the road that we are headed on now. And if we remain on this road, we will have to explain why our children and grandchildren did not inherit what we did. To get off of this road, we must re-embrace the principles that made us the greatest nation to begin with. And that's why the theme of this gathering, that our time is now, forces us to answer a second question, and that is, what does it mean to be a conservative in the 21st century? I can tell you what it can never mean. Being a conservative can never be about simply an attitude. Being a conservative cannot simply be about how long you're willing to scream, how angry you're willing to be, or how many names you're willing to call people. That is not conservatism. Conservatism has never been about fear or about anger, not at its best. Do people have a right to be fearful of the future right now? Yes. Because for over 2 decades, leaders in neither party have solved the problems before us. Do people have a right to be angry about not just the political class, but every institution in society? Absolutely. But neither anger nor fear will solve our problems. It can serve to motivate us, but it will not solve our problems. What will solve our problems is a specific set of ideas built on bedrock principles that made America the greatest nation to begin with, and applying those principles to the unique challenges of this new century. And those principles are not complicated. It begins with the notion that this nation was founded on a powerful spiritual principle, that our rights do not come from government, our rights do not come from our laws, our rights do not come from our leaders, our rights come from God. Our government does not exist to decide these rights, nor to grant them. Our government exists to protect them. And that is why we have a constitution that limits the power of the federal government to a few specific but important things. And we have abandoned that. We have abandoned it in both political parties. We have reached a moment in our history where we think that every problem in America has to have a federal government solution. Every problem in America does not have a federal government solution. In fact, most problems in America do not have a federal government solution, and many of them are created by the federal government to begin with. And so to move forward in a better direction, it does mean re-embracing and following the First Amendment. For what that stands for is not just the right to believe anything you want, but the right to live out the teachings of your faith in every single aspect of your life. It means understanding that the Second Amendment was not a nice suggestion. It is a constitutional right to protect yourself and your families from terrorists or criminals. It means adhering to the 10th Amendment, in which power, if it even belongs in government, is reserved to the states. Not because we don't care about our problems, but because we care. We know that when the federal government tries to solve these problems, it often makes them worse, not better. So let's return power back to the states. Conservatism means re-embracing true free enterprise. True free enterprise, which I believe in, not because my parents were wealthy, not because I inherited millions of dollars, because I did not, but because as I walked onto the stage here today, I walked through the kitchen of this hotel, and I met people and shook the hands of people who are doing the jobs my parents once did. You know why they have a job? You know why they have a job? You know why my parents had a job? Because free enterprise works. Because someone created those jobs, and with those jobs they are able to feed their families and raise them and buy homes and a better future. Free enterprise is the best economic system in the history of the world, because it is the only system where you can make poor people richer and you don't have to make rich people poor. It means conservatism means believing in a strong national defense, not because we want war, but because we love peace. Because history has taught us a painful lesson, that weakness is the enemy of peace. That weakness invites violence. That weakness invites war. And so conservatives believe that the U.S. military should always be the most powerful one on earth, because the world is a safer and better place when America is the strongest military in the world. Conservatives believe we stand by our allies, especially allies like Israel. They are the only pro-American, free enterprise democracy in the Middle East. Conservatives believe that we need to defeat radical Islam, not because we want war, but because ISIS and other radical Islamists are enemies of peace. And that's why we need a president under whom the best intelligence agencies in the world will find terrorists, and the best military in the world will destroy them. And if we capture them alive, a president that won't bring them to the United States, a president that won't grant them a court-appointed lawyer, a president that will send these terrorists where they belong, to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And conservatives believe we take care of our veterans because we have a sacred obligation to take care of them after they've taken care of us. It's something that's not happening now. And yes, conservatives believe in traditional values, not because we want to impose our views on anyone, but because to abandon those values would be to ignore our history. Americans are not the most generous people on earth because our laws make us generous. People do not contribute to charity in this country in record amounts because we have a tax break from it. We do so because this nation has been shaped by Judeo-Christian principles that teach us that we have an obligation to care for one another. And we believe in traditional values because without them, without the belief in an all-powerful God, then the very founding of this country was meaningless. It was founded on the principle that our rights come from God. If there is no God, then where do your rights come from other than what your leaders decide they are? You do not understand America, and you do not understand our history if you do not understand the role that our faith community has played in making us the greatest nation in the history of all mankind. So I am preaching to the proverbial choir on this issue. Why? Because I think there's a growing amount of confusion about what conservatism is. And it is time for us to understand that conservatism is not built on personalities. Conservatism is not simply built on how angry you might seem from time to time. Conservatism is built on a set of principles and ideas that our nation desperately needs at perhaps the most important moment in a generation. For over 200 years, this has been an exceptional country. I know this personally, as so do many of you, because for me, America is not just the country I was born in. It is the nation that literally changed the history of my family. But we have to remember that what made that possible was not an accident. America is not a special country by accident. It did not happen on its own. It happened because for over 200 years, each generation before us did what needed to be done. For over 2 centuries, each generation of Americans before us confronted and solved problems. They embraced opportunities, and Americans have never had it easy. This was a nation founded by declaring independence from the most powerful empire in the world. This was a nation that faced a divisive and bloody civil war, 2 great world wars, a long Cold War. The 1960s were difficult for this country. The civil rights movement divided us regionally. The Vietnam War divided us generationally. Americans have never had it easy. But each generation before us confronted their challenges and solved their problems. And that's why each generation before us left a country better off than the one that was left for them. My fellow conservatives, the time has come for this generation to do its part. The moment has arrived for us to do our part now. And the stakes could not be higher because the future of the greatest nation on earth is at stake. And I want to speak specifically to the younger people here today, because I know there's a lot of negativity out there. I know that times are difficult. I want you to know that I believe something with all my heart. I believe that today's young Americans are on the verge and have the chance to become the next greatest generation in American history. I believe that the 21st century is tailor-made for America. There are now hundreds of millions of people on this planet that a decade ago were starving, and now they want to buy things from you. They want to trade with you. They want to partner with you and collaborate with you. And these young Americans are the best collaborators in the history of mankind. These young Americans are the most technologically advanced people that have ever lived. On the campaign trail, unless you're under 25, no one knows how to use their camera phone. These young Americans have the chance to fulfill an incredible potential and destiny. But we have to give them a chance. And they won't have a chance if a Hillary Clinton or a Bernie Sanders is elected. And they won't have a chance. And they won't have a chance if the conservative movement is hijacked by someone who is not a conservative. And so, I'm already over time, so let me close with this. Well, I got to answer questions. I get to answer questions now in a moment from Dana Bash. So let me close with this. I know that all the news today sounds bad. And by the way, for young Americans, know this. The one thing that's always true about history is that every generation believes the next generation is really messed up. I want you to believe and know if we do what needs to be done. I want you to know what history is going to say about you. I want you to know what history is going to say about us if we make the right choice now. It will say that this generation of Americans lived in the early years of this new century in a very difficult time. The world was changing, and we struggled to keep pace with it. And it will say the truth. We almost got it wrong. After 8 years of Barack Obama and one crazy election, we almost got it wrong. We came this close. But then we remembered who we were. Then we remembered what America was. Then we confronted our challenges and embraced our opportunities. And because we did what needed to be done in 2016, our children became the freest and most prosperous Americans that ever lived. Because we did what needed to be done, the American dream didn't just survive. It reached more people. It changed more lives than ever before. Because we did what needed to be done, the 21st century became greater than the 20th century. It became the greatest era in our history. It became a new American century. This is what we have the chance to do together, and our time to do it is now. Thank you. Thank you. And now,